Do you ever have doubts about your faith? Do you ever feel like you're struggling alone or that your spiritual doubts are totally unique from everyone else's? Spoiler alert, they're not. In today's episode of Be the 25, we're unmasking the truth that doubts and the specific things people doubt about are more widespread than that last TikTok video that went viral. Join us. This episode starts in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Be the 25 podcast, the place where teens and young adults come to explore how to live the Christian life in a non-Christian world. I'm your host, Dr. Sharon O'Hara. Come join us and get your faith ready for the journey ahead. Well, hello there, and welcome to the podcast. Get ready for an eye-opening episode on spiritual doubt. You know, like any adventure, there are mountaintop experiences and time spent down in the valley. So maybe you're walking through a valley of doubt right now. If so, this episode is going to bring you hope and help today. And if you're not in the valley, this is going to help you too, because you don't know what's around the corner of your faith journey. You might encounter a situation that may cause you to question your faith, and this episode is going to help equip you ahead of time. Or God may bring someone along your path who needs the very information you receive today to help them through their season of doubt. So, let's get started. Let me map out where we're going. We're going to begin by defining what doubt is and then explore why it's a completely normal part of the faith journey. So, what exactly is doubt? Well, doubt is simply the feeling of being unsure, uncertain about something, and it wavers between two positions. Think of a child's seesaw, that long, flat board that's balanced on a fixed point where one end goes up and the other end goes down. Doubt is just like that. It teeters between belief and unbelief. One moment we believe, the next moment, well, we're not so sure. And before you and I know it, we become up and down about our faith. And that causes an unsettling feeling inside of us. You know, James 1:6 describes that feeling perfectly. The one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. Ever feel like that? Know someone who does? You know, people who experience doubts about their faith, they tend to think they're the only ones struggling. They're not quite sure what's going on. They may even think something's wrong with them. They tend to keep their doubts to themselves. Many are afraid to admit they even have them. Sometimes feelings of shame is even associated with doubt, and all this makes them feel lonely and isolated as they try to figure out a way to move forward. Some get stuck and don't know how to move forward, and this often leads to anxiety and even depression. And then there's a real temptation to walk away from the church and Christian friends at the very time when they need the Christian community the most. You know, I believe what I'm about to share can be a real game changer if you're grappling with doubt or know someone who is, so that nobody listening today continues to feel alone, different, or ashamed afterwards. What I'm about to say just might set you free or set your friend free. And I've boiled it down and made it simple, guys. I've boiled it down to just two things for you to remember. Number one is this. It's common for people to encounter doubt somewhere on the faith journey. Let me say that again. It's common for people to encounter doubt somewhere on the faith journey. It's a pretty common thing. Now, how common is it? Well, the stats show that 2/3 of Christians have experienced it at some point in their life. That means that the majority of Christians today encounter doubt. Now, I'm certainly one who falls into that category. After getting all my degrees from 3 top Christian universities, I wondered this question: how do I know I've got it right? Because everyone in all the other religions think they have it right too. But how do I know I've got it right? I started questioning if Christianity really is true. And I'll be honest with you, I felt so alone. It was a scary time. I was afraid to admit to anyone that I was having these doubts. You see, I had been a Christian since I was a little girl. And now here I was, a leader in the church. I taught Sunday school. I served on several committees. What would people think? I ended up confiding in a friend of mine and asked her to pray for me. And I ended up processing through the doubt and getting to the other side of it with a much stronger faith than before. Now, I didn't have to tell you that, but I share it because I've been there too. And I know how nice it is to hear that someone else is going through a similar thing. I know plenty of Christians who went through seasons of doubt. It is not uncommon at all. But there's more. There have been Christians in previous generations who encountered spiritual doubts. C.S. Lewis is one of them. He was one of the greatest Christian thinkers, yet struggled in his faith after his wife died of bone cancer. Her death tested his faith. He even wrote a book about it called A Grief Observed. And in it, he talks about the struggle with faith when God seems absent during the times we think we need him the most. Billy Graham was another doubter. The great evangelist went through a period of serious doubt about the Bible, wondering if it really was true and whether or not it could be trusted. A friend of his decided to reject the Bible as God's word, which only added to Billy Graham's confusion. People from previous generations encountered doubt. But there's more. There are even doubters in Jesus' generation. Now, I'm talking about actual followers of Jesus who believed in Jesus, like John the Baptist, who announced to everyone that his cousin Jesus is the Messiah. But when John was put into prison for calling King Herod out on a marital affair, Matthew 11 tells us John sent word to Jesus asking if he really was the Messiah. And then, of course, there's Doubting Thomas. Who doesn't know about Doubting Thomas? Who wouldn't believe Jesus actually resurrected from the dead until he saw and touched Jesus for himself. Now, these two men, they personally knew Jesus in the first century and were involved in his ministry, yet they doubted some things about him. But there's more. Even before Jesus showed up on earth, some Old Testament followers of God had their doubts. For example, when God called Gideon to lead the Israelites as a judge, Gideon asked, "Well, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us?" Gideon doubted God's character when he thought God abandoned the Israelites. Why, God hadn't abandoned them at all. That's why he was calling Gideon. And even though Gideon questioned God, he's listed in Hebrews 11 as a hero of the faith. Interesting. So the Bible and church history are full of examples of believers who had doubts and questioned things. Not uncommon at all. Every single generation has had its doubters. That means millions of Christians and God followers were doubters before you and me. And there'll be more doubters after us too. And that should bring you great comfort knowing other Christians experience it too. You are not alone. But hold on, there's more. Christians aren't the only ones who have doubts. And this is something most of us don't realize. People from other world religions and from other non-religious worldviews experience times of spiritual doubt too. The atheists, Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims, the Scientologists, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, and all the others encounter it. So struggles about faith, it's nothing new. Maybe it's new to you or new to your friend who's struggling, but it isn't new at all. Matter of fact, it's very common, more common than you think. And it's important for us to remember that and communicate and remind one another of that, because we tend to think we're all alone in this and that we're the only ones struggling, when in fact, we're not. The reality is, almost everyone experiences spiritual doubt at some point in their faith journey. So number one, it's common to experience doubt. And number two, the things people doubt about, they're common too. The same doubts that trouble people today troubled people yesterday and way back when. Does God exist? Is Jesus the only way to get to heaven? Is the Bible reliable and true? Did God create me for a specific purpose? Can spiritual beliefs line up with scientific discoveries? And even doubts about sexual identity. People from all walks of life, Christians and non-Christian, throughout the centuries have been questioning the same things. For example, it's not uncommon today for people, even Christian believers, to question their sexual identity. We may hear about it more today because of exposure in the media and on social media and with influencers, but this isn't anything new. I can tell you it was an issue before 1406 BC. That's when Moses, under God's inspiration, wrote the book of Deuteronomy. In that book, God warned the Israelites against wearing clothes of the opposite sex in order to appear like the other gender. Deuteronomy 22:5 says, "A woman must not wear men's clothing, nor a man wear women's clothing." And I'll talk about this issue obviously more fully in another episode because it's a hot topic today. But for the purpose of this episode, I want to make this point. Why were these words necessary if some of God's people weren't experiencing doubts about their own sexual identity? That's because some of them were. People from all walks of life, Christian and non-Christian, throughout the centuries have been questioning the same things you and I question. There isn't one doubt or something similar to it that hasn't been brought up before. Now, with all that being said, I want to point this out. I do think that millennials, Gen Zers, and Gen Alphas, you face a different challenge than previous generations. The Barna Research Group study showed that millennials experience twice as much as doubt than any of the other generational age groups. And those who go through college they're twice as likely to experience doubt than those who don't attend. The most common reason, the number one reason that teens and young adults gave for why they left the faith was intellectual skepticism, which is doubting. Now, why is that? Well, a big reason is that millennials, Gen Zers, Gen Alphas are the first ones who have immediate access to information and other worldviews like never before. It's all a click away or a pop-up away as you scroll away on your devices. And because there's so much information and misinformation, I can understand why you may question what you believe and even who to believe. The noise can cause confusion or add to the confusion. So in that sense, yes, I think it's more of a challenge for you today than from those from previous generations. But like the other generations, there's still hope and there's still help. So if you're experiencing doubt, remember, it's common. And also remember the things you doubt about, they're common too. And here's the key to understanding all this, guys. Each day, as you get older, you're making your way into becoming an independent adult. Some of you may have already made that transition, but questioning things is just part of that process. You were taught to believe certain things from your teachers, your parents, your youth pastors, your pastor. The things you were taught, they're either right or wrong, true or false. And as you get older, you start using your own mind, like you're supposed to see if those things really are true. You meet different people with different beliefs and different viewpoints than you. You see different things on social media. All this new information and misinformation comes your way. You try to sort through it. You compare it to what you already believe. Uh-oh, it contradicts what I already believe. Well, which one is true? Questions arise. Doubts may form. More questions then arise. So you look for the answers. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you look for the answers, obviously, objectively and from credible sources. And yet you stumble upon some answers. You draw your own conclusions. This is all normal. It's part of the natural process of growing up and thinking for yourself. That's why so many people question what they believe. They're just going through the process. This way, you're not piggybacking on your parents' faith or your youth pastor's faith. You make it your own. You see, doubting doesn't mean you're losing your faith. It means you're giving your faith a chance to grow. Here's the sequence. Doubts lead to questions. Questions lead to answers. Answers lead to truth. And the truth sets you free. So doubts are totally normal on this faith journey. I know it may feel confusing and even a little bit overwhelming at times, but guess what? You're not alone in this. Remember that. Well, that's a wrap for today, guys. In our next episode, I'll give you some strategies for resolving those uncertainties. In the meantime, how about this? Take a deep breath and relax, because you're normal. Your friend who's struggling with doubt, he's normal too. And I'm normal, although I know some people may debate that. Don't keep this episode to yourself. Share it with your friends. Until next time, keep growing and keep going.